Okay, I hope I'm audible to all students who are attending this lecture for the Indian Statistical Institute MSQE entrance. Okay, we intend to start with our discussion of the ISI PEA 2021 entrance. Okay, and we intend to solve a few questions from this question paper in this lecture. Okay, so let's start with the first question. If the nth partial sum of the series summation as n goes on from 1 to infinity an is Sn, which is given by the term 2n square plus 2 upon 3n square plus 1, then what is summation as n goes on from 1 to infinity an? So it's a mathematical economics question based on the concept of series. Okay, so let's come to the whiteboard and let's solve this particular question on the whiteboard. So we intend to start with the discussion of ISI PEA 2021 entrance, and we look at question 1. So what is given to us? We are given that the nth partial sum, of the series summation as n goes on from 1 to infinity an is Sn, which is given by 2n square plus 2 upon 3n square plus 1. So guys, I can write the nth partial sum means if I take, so first of all, you should understand the concept of partial sum. So I can write my S1 is nothing but A1, S2 is equal to A1 plus A2, S3 will be equal to A1 plus A2 plus A3. These are all partial sums. So I can say, what is my Sn, guys? My Sn will be A1 plus A2 plus A3 plus dot 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 An. These are all partial sums. Okay, these are all partial sums. And what do we need to find out? We need to find out summation as n goes on from 1 to infinity an, where we are given that Sn is equal to 2n square plus 1 upon 3n square plus 1. So I can write that in general, I can write that summation as I goes on from 1 to infinity ai. How can I write this, guys? A1 plus A2 plus dot dot dot. It will keep on going. It's infinite. Okay. Now, how can I write this? I can also write this as A1 plus A2 plus dot 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 An as n tends to infinity. I can also write it like this. Summation as I goes on from 1 to infinity ai, which is A1 plus A2 plus dot 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 till infinity. I can also write it as A1 to An as n tends to infinity. And what is this? The term in the bracket I can write as summation as I goes on from 1 to n ai. A1 plus A2 plus dot 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 An I can write as summation as I goes on from 1 to n ai. What is summation as I goes on from 1 to n ai equal to? It's nothing but Sn. This is what? This is nothing but summation as I goes on from 1 to n ai, which is equal to Sn only. And Sn is given to us as 2n square plus 1 upon 3n square plus 1. So I can write this term summation ai as I goes on from 1 to n is Sn. And what is Sn? Sn itself is equal to 2n square plus 1 upon 3n square plus 1. So guys, all I have to do is to evaluate this limit. Now we know how to evaluate limits. We have done this in our mathematical methods for economics course. Okay. So erasing this part off, I can write, therefore, limit as n tends to infinity. I can take 2 common. I can take n square common within this. That leaves me with 2 plus 1 upon n square. In the denominator also, I can take n square common, which leaves me with 3 plus 1 upon n square. N square cancels. Put infinity, put n as infinity. So 2 plus 1 upon infinity square upon 3 plus 1 upon infinity square. All of us know from my mathematical methods for economics course, infinity square is equal to infinity. Okay, so I can write 2 plus 1 upon infinity upon 3 plus 1 upon infinity, and all of us know from the rules of limits, 1 upon infinity is equal to 0. So these are the rules of infinity which I have covered in my mathematical methods for economics course, part 1. Okay, so this will be 2 plus 0 upon 3 plus 0, which will be equal to 2 by 3, which is the final answer for this question. So I am revising the question again. We were given that the nth partial sum of this series was equal to this. So this is the sum S1. This is the partial sum when you only have A1. S2 is nothing but A1 plus A2. S3 is nothing but A1 plus A2 plus A3. So Sn will be A1 plus A2 plus dot 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 till An, which I can write as summation as I goes on from 1 to n Ai. And this term, which we have to find out, summation as n goes on from 1 to infinity An, it's nothing but limit as n tends to infinity Sn, because Sn is the partial sum of n terms. So if you evaluate this limit, you're going to get the answer. So this is nothing but limit, or I can say this is nothing but summation as I goes on, from 1 to infinity Ai is nothing but 2 by 3. So if I come to the question paper, we can mark the correct answer. It's 2 by 3. This is the correct answer for this question. So hoping all students have understood this. Let's look at question number 2. Using the data from a samples of size n, the intercept and slope coefficients from an ordinary least squares regression of y on x are a and b respectively. Which of the following statements are false? We are given 4 statements. You can clearly see it's a question based on econometrics, and we have done this. We have done the ordinary least square procedure in my introductory econometrics course. Okay, so let's come to the whiteboard and let's solve this question. So we look at question number 2. What are we given? Okay, we are given that from a sample of size n, the intercept and slope coefficients, from the OLS, which means ordinary least squares of y on x, are a and b respectively. Okay, so guys, recall that when we do the ordinary least squares, what does that mean? Okay, so all students should recall that OLS procedure involves the following. So guys, what is my sample regression function, SRF? Remember, my sample regression function yi is equal to, I can call it as alpha plus beta xi. This is my yi. Okay, or since we have taken a and b, I can take a and b only. So it's going to be a plus bxi, where a is my intercept term, b is my slope coefficient. This is my sample regression function plus ei. So ei is what? Ei is my sample residual term. We have done all the theory behind this in our introductory econometrics course. So this is my typical sample regression functions. And this I can also write as yi is equal to yi hat plus ei, where yi hat is nothing but the mean value of y which you get from the sample, which is a plus bxi. So a plus bxi, which is also my deterministic component, is nothing but yi hat. Ei is my sample residual term. I can write my actual yi is equal to the yi hat. Yi hat is what you estimate from the sample. The value of y which you estimate from the sample is yi hat. This is my residual term and this is my actual yi. Okay, so this is my sample regression function. So OLS procedure involves what optimization problem? The objective is to minimize summation EI square. And the objective is to choose the sample, the intercept term and the slope coefficient. So this is my OLS procedure. So minimize summation EI is what, guys? Now I can write EI as yi minus yi hat. So minimize yi minus yi hat ka square. Okay. And if you look at this closely, what is yi hat? Yi hat is a plus bxi. So I can write minus a plus bxi ka square. So our objective finally is to choose a and b so as to minimize yi minus a minus bxi ka square. This is our objective for the ordinary least squares procedure. Okay. Now, if I can also write this as summation EI square. Summation EI square is nothing but summation yi minus yi hat. Yi hat itself is a plus bxi, so this is what we get. Now, if I differentiate it, look at the first order conditions, guys. How do we maximize or minimize? Put the first order derivatives with equal to 0. So we are minimizing with respect to the slope coefficient and the intercept term. Okay. So this is going to be del summation EI square by del A equal to 0, where A denotes the intercept term. So if I partially differentiate with respect to A, what do I get? Summation 2 times yi minus a minus bxi into minus a ka derivative with respect to a is minus 1. So this becomes summation minus 2 times yi minus a minus bxi equal to 0, because we need to put it equal to 0. So minus 2 comes outside the summation. Yi minus a minus bxi equal to 0. I take minus 2 to the right hand side, it vanishes. So I get summation yi minus a minus bxi equal to 0. Okay, this is what we get. And then I can open up the brackets. I can write it as summation yi minus, guys, a if I add n times, because all this is going from 1 to n. I is going from 1 to n in all the terms. Okay, so summation yi minus a, if I add n times, I get na minus b times summation xi is equal to 0. Okay, so if I erase this particular term, I'm erasing the initial part now. We all know the question. So I'm solving the question further on the top. So I can write this as summation yi is equal to na plus b times summation xi, which implies if I divide both sides by n, summation yi by n is equal to a plus b times summation xi by n. Okay, so if you look at this, guys, in the option, this is b. In the options given to us, it's option B. This is option B in the question given to you. Okay, that means it's correct. If you look at this, guys, if you look at this term in the question paper, this is nothing but option number C, where the objective is to choose A and B so as to minimize summation yi minus a minus bxi square. In the question paper, A and B are given to you as alpha and beta. That's completely fine. Okay, and so you can think of A and B as solutions to alpha and beta. Okay, you can think of A and B as solutions to alpha and beta. And then, guys, if I minimize with respect to B, so I can do the following: del summation EI square by del B equal to 0. If I partially differentiate with respect to B, what do I get? Summation 2 times yi minus a minus bxi times minus xi equal to 0. So what do I get? minus 2 comes outside the bracket, I get summation yi minus a minus bxi times xi equal to 0. Okay, if I erase this particular part now, let us see what do we get. Again, guys, I can take minus 2 to the right hand side. I can do that. So what do we get? If I take minus 2 to the right hand side, therefore this implies summation yi minus a minus bxi into xi is equal to 0. And if I solve this up further, I can even leave it here also. So in the question paper, this is nothing but option A. This is nothing but option A. That means if you look at if I come back to the question paper, guys, which of the following is false? The question is asking you which of the following is false. Now on the whiteboard, I have shown that this is correct. Summation yi minus a minus bxi into xi is equal to 0. How did we get this? By doing this. I got summation yi minus a minus bxi into xi equals. That means this is correct. Then let's come to the whiteboard. Let's come back to the question paper. This option is also correct. Why? Because this is something, if I come back to the whiteboard, this is something we got by performing this first order condition. Okay, we got summation yi by n is equal to a plus b times summation xi by n. So this is also correct. Okay, if I come to the whiteboard, if I come back to the question paper, option C is also correct because that is our optimization problem at the first place. We need to find out A and B as solutions to summation yi minus alpha minus beta xi equal to 0. Now on the whiteboard, I've taken A and B, but you can think of A and B as solutions to alpha and beta. So A and B particularly are the values of alpha and beta which fulfill this minimization problem. So this is also correct because this was our objective. So which is the only option which is false? This is the only option which is false. So this is my correct answer. Because what was the objective? The objective was to find out which of the following is false. Through the entire OLS procedure, I have shown that the first three options are absolutely correct. The only option which is false is option D. So option D is my correct answer. Because when you are doing the OLS, you are not minimizing the modulus of yi minus yi hat. When you're doing the OLS procedure, you are minimizing the sum of the squares of the difference between yi and yi hat. So I can erase all this now. I can erase all this and we have figured out. So by finding out the correct procedure, we have figured out what's the false. So this is my answer for question. Okay, hoping all students have understood this. Let's quickly look at question number 3 now. Consider the production function z, which is equal to 2x plus 3y. For what price ratio px by py will a corner solution in y, that is x equal to 0, be possible if the objective is to minimize the cost of producing a given positive quantity z naught of z? So again, it's a question based on optimization problem. So let's come to the whiteboard and solve this question. So erasing this part off, let's look at question number 3. So let's write what is given to us. So we are given the production function. We are given the production function z, which is equal to 2x plus 3y. Okay. And what do I need to find out? So to find the price ratio, we need to find out the price ratio px by py, where px is the price of commodity x, py is the price of commodity y. Okay, so we need to find out the price ratio px by py such that the corner solution in y is possible. When I say corner solution in y, it means my x is equal to 0. So I need to find out the price ratio px by py such that the corner solution in y is possible if the objective is to minimize if the objective is to minimize the cost of producing a given positive quantity Z naught of Z. Okay, so let's quickly solve this particular question. So first of all, we can write what is our minimization problem. We need to minimize the cost. What is the cost, guys? Commodity X costs PX units. Commodity Y costs PY units. So what is my cost? My cost is nothing but XPX plus YPY. Every unit of commodity X costs PX units. So total cost of buying X is X into PX. Every unit of commodity Y costs PY units. So total cost of buying commodity Y is YPY. So minimize C, which is XPX plus YPY, subject to producing a given positive quantity Z naught of Z. That means whatever I am producing, 2x plus 3y, okay, whatever we are producing should be greater than or equal to Z naught. Producing a given positive quantity Z naught of Z. Now, guys, at the optimum, what we are producing should exactly be equal to Z naught, because the objective is to minimize the cost of producing a given positive quantity Z naught of Z. So I can write, therefore, at the optimum, whatever we are producing should exactly be equal to the positive quantity Z naught, so as to minimize the cost. Okay, now from this I can find one of the variables, so I can solve for y. So 3y is equal to Z naught minus 2x, which implies my y will be Z naught minus 2x by 3. Remember, Z naught is a constant. It's a positive quantity of Z, it's a constant. So now putting this in the objective function. Putting this in the objective function, which is my cost function. So therefore, what will my cost be now? It will be xpx plus y. How much is y? Z naught minus 2x by 3 times py. So you can see we have got everything in terms of x now. Minimize xpx plus z naught minus 2x by 3 times py. Now I can do a bit of algebra and I can write this in terms of y equal to mx plus c. So how do we do that? xpx plus z naught py by 3 minus 2x py by 3. I've just opened up the brackets, guys. So this becomes, within this and this, I can take x common. So what do I get? Px minus 2py by 3 times x plus z naught py by 3. Now compare it with the equation y equal to mx plus c. If you compare this equation and this equation, it's a linear equation. It's a straight line. All of us know from mathematics the equation of a straight line. So if you look at this, this is my slope and this is my intercept. This is my slope and this is my intercept. Okay, so now our objective is to find out px by py such that the corner solution in y, that is x is equal to 0, is possible. Okay, now if you look at this equation, guys, if I say that the slope is positive, the minimization is going to happen at x equal to 0, because let me explain you in a further elaborate way. Let me erase this particular part off. So guys, if in general I can write, suppose my equation of the straight line is y equal to mx plus c, where m is the slope, of the line and c is the constant, or I can say the vertical intercept. This is the equation of a straight line. When will this straight line have a minima at x equal to 0? If the slope is positive, then x equal to 0 will be the minima. Because guys, if the slope is positive, it means the line is upward sloping. The line is upward sloping means, if I write the line is upward sloping, what does it mean? So This is x, this is y. This is my line y equal to mx plus c. If I say that the slope is positive, it means the line is upward sloping. And if the line is upward sloping, the minima is going to happen at 0, 0. Because as you further keep on increasing the values of x, the values of y are also going to increase. So we can say that the corner solution, that is x equal to 0, is possible only when the slope is positive. Because once you show that the slope is positive, it means as x keeps on increasing, y will also keep on increasing. So the minimization or the corner solution is possible only when the slope is positive. Now, what is the value of the slope? We have already found that out. So I can write the slope of the cost function is, this is the slope, px minus 2py by 3. This is the slope, right? Px minus 2py by 3, y equal to mx plus c. So my slope is this, and this should be greater than 0. This should be greater than 0. I can say greater than equal to. The slope should be positive, greater than equal to 0. Okay, so I can write this as, I can further solve this for px by py. So px should be greater than equal to 2py by 3. Or I can take py on the left hand side. I can write px by py should be greater than equal to 2 by 3. This is the answer for this question. The price ratio px by py should be greater than equal to 2 by 3, because if this happens, your slope will be positive. If your slope is positive, your line will be upward sloping. If your line is upward sloping, your minimum will occur at 0, 0, which is what the question is asking you. The question asks you to find that price ratio such that the corner solution in y means x equal to 0 is possible. And you can clearly see the minimization of cost at x equal to 0 is possible only when the slope is positive. By slope, I mean px minus 2py by 3 in this question. If you solve it, you get px by py greater than equal to 2 by 3. So if I come back to the question paper, we can mark the correct answer. Px by py greater than equal to 2 by 3. This is the correct answer for this question. Okay, and then let's look at the last question for this lecture, after which I stop in this lecture. A number is chosen randomly from the first billion natural numbers. Okay, don't get scared when you read the word billion natural numbers. Okay, the probability that the product of the number with its two immediate successors is divisible by 24 is closest to. So we need to find the probability that the product of a number with its two immediate successors is divisible by 24. So it's a very interesting question. Let's come to the whiteboard and let's solve this question on the whiteboard. We look at question number 4. Okay, so let's write what we are given. So we are given that a number is chosen randomly. A number is chosen randomly from the first billion natural numbers. It is chosen randomly from the first billion natural numbers. The probability. So what do I need to find? So I can write to find the probability that the product of the number with its two immediate successors is divisible by 24. This is what we need to find out. Okay, so first of all, let's take any natural number. So consider any natural number n belonging to the set of all natural numbers. Okay, so the product of the number with its two immediate successors. So I need to write, so I can write S of n as the product of n with its two immediate successors, n plus 1 and n plus 2. If I talk about a natural number n, what will be its two immediate successors, n plus 1 and n plus 2? we need to show that what is the probability that this is divisible by 20. I need to find out the probability. I need to find out the probability that S of n, which is n into n plus 1 into n plus 2, is divisible by 24. This is what I need to find out. Okay, so let's quickly work this out. So first of all, guys, if you look at any three consecutive natural numbers, take any three consecutive natural numbers. Suppose I take n as 1. Then this will be 1 into 1 plus 1, 2 into 1 plus 2, 3. If I take n as 2, then S will be 2 into 2 plus 1, 3 into 2 plus 2, 4. If I take n as 3, my S will be 3 into 3 plus 1, 4 into 3 plus 2, 5, and so on. You observe that you take any three consecutive natural numbers, they are always divisible by 3. You can see this is also divisible by 3. This is also divisible by 3. This is also divisible by 3. You take n as 4. What will S be? 4 into 4 plus 1, 5 into 4 plus 1, 6. This is also divisible by 3, and so on. So first of all, what do we learn? We learn that Sn will always be divisible by 3. Will always be divisible by 3 since at least one of the three consecutive numbers is divisible by 3. You take any three consecutive numbers, guys, one of them will sure be divisible by 3. You can check that yourself. We have already done that. I took n as 1, you take n as 2, you take n as 3, you take n as 4, you take n as 5, 6, and so on. You will see that when you multiply the three consecutive numbers, they will always be divisible by 3. Now, all I have to show is what are the numbers of the form. So it's divisible by 3. To be divisible by 24, it should also be divisible by 8. If I show that that form of numbers is divisible by 8 also and 3 also, I can safely conclude that they are divisible by 24. So I can say that therefore, in order to check the divisibility, by 24, we need to check if S of n is divisible by 8. Now, guys, first of all, if you look at what are the numbers I can have with 8, so I can have the following forms. I can have the natural numbers of the form 8k. I can have natural numbers of the form 8k plus 1, natural numbers of the form 8k plus 2, 8k plus 3, 8k plus 4, 8k plus 5, 8k plus 6, and 8k plus 7. Remember, 8k plus 8 will go back to the cycle of 8k only. It's a cycle, okay? So this completes one cycle of all the numbers of the form 8k, 8k plus 1, 8k plus 2, 8k plus 3, 8k plus 4, plus 5, plus 6, plus 7. The moment I write 8k plus 8, I can take 8 common, so it becomes 8 times k plus 1, which is of the same form as 8k only. So I don't need to go to 8k plus 8 because that will repeat the same cycle starting from here only. So I'll start with 8k and I'll go on to 8k plus 7. Now, these are the numbers. These are all the forms possible where I can write k belongs to natural numbers. Where k belongs to set of all natural numbers. Now we need to put them in this and we need to check whether they are divisible or not. Okay, so let's quickly do that. So you can think about this as your sample space. For divisibility by 8, this is your sample space. Okay, I can erase this off. let's quickly solve this question further. So erasing this part off, let us now put 8k plus 1 in all the, let's put all these expressions in SN now. So if you put these expressions, so first of all, k belongs to natural numbers, guys. Okay, so let's take k as 1. So let's take k as 1. So this will become 8. 8 plus 1, 9. 8 plus 2, 10. 11. This will be 12, 13, 14, and 15. These are my numbers. I have specifically taken k as 1 because 1 is a natural number. I put k equal to 1 in all this. Now put all these values in your expression for Sn. Okay. So if I put these values, what do I get? Putting n equal to 8. So I can write for n equal to 8. My S8 will be 8 into 8 plus 1 into 8 plus 2. And you can see it's divisible by 8. It is divisible by 8. That means all numbers of the form 8k are divisible by 8. Let me put 8k plus 1. That means let me put k is 1. So let me put 9. For n equal to 9, my S9 will be 9 into 9 plus 1, 10 into 9 plus 2, 11. Is this divisible by 8? You can see it's not divisible by 8. This is not divisible by 8. Okay, so that means I can take it up as a blue color. With blue color, I can take this up. That means this is not divisible by 8. All the red ticks are divisible by 8. All the blue ticks are not divisible by 8. Okay, let me now put n as 10. 10 is nothing but 8k plus 3 form. 8k plus 2 form. 10 is nothing but 8k plus 2 ka form. So I can write for n equal to 10, S of 10 will be 10 into 10 plus 1, 11 into 10 plus 2, 12. Is this divisible by 8? If I divide this by 8, 2 4s are, 2 5s are, 2 4 3s are. So what do we get? We get 5 into 11, 30. It's divisible by 8. It is divisible by 8. So if you put n equal to 10 in this expression, 10 into 10 plus 1 into 10 plus 2, you solve it, you'll see it's divisible by 8. So since it's divisible by 8, I can put a red tick here, it's divisible by 8. Then let me erase this part off now. Let us now put 11. 11 is of what form, guys? So 11 is of the form 8k plus 3. So for n equal to 11, my S11 will be 11 into 11 plus 1, 12 into 11 plus 2, 13. You can see it's not divisible by 8. If you divide by 8, you are going to get a remainder in this. So I can put a blue tick here. It's not divisible by 8. Then let's look at the next number, 12. 12 is of the form 8k plus 4. S of 12 will be 12 into 12 plus 1, 13 into 12 plus 2, 14. Is it divisible by 8? Let's check this out. 2 4s are, 2 6s are. Okay, 2 2s are 4, 2 3s are 6, and 2 7s are 14. So denominator is completely gone. We are left with 1 here. So this is divisible by 8. Since it's divisible by 8, I can put a red tick here. Okay. Then let's look at the next number now. So guys, I erase this part off now. Let's look at the next number, which is 13. Okay. So 13 is of the form 8k plus 5. If I put n as 13, I get S of 13 as 13 into 13 plus 1, 14 into 13 plus 2, 15. You can see it's not divisible by 8. If you divide by 8, you're going to get a remainder. So I can put a blue tick. This is not divisible by 8. Okay. Then let's look at the next number, which is 14, which is of the form 8k plus 6. So for n equal to 14, S of 14 will be how much? 14 into 14 plus 1, 15 into 14 plus 2, 16. You can see it's divisible by 8. 8 to the 16. So I can write this is divisible by 8. So I can put a red tick that all numbers of the form 8k plus 6 are divisible by 8. And then let's take the last one. Let's check out the last one, which is 15. So 15 is of the form 8k plus 7. So if I put n as 15, S of 15 will be 15 into 15 plus 1, 16 into 15 plus 2, 17. It's divisible by 8. 8 2s are 16. So I can put a red tick here that this is also divisible by 8. So all the red ticks are divisible by 8. All the blue ticks are not divisible by 8. And the ones which are divisible by 8 are also divisible by 3 also, because we have shown that product of any 3 consecutive natural numbers is divisible by 3 for sure. So I can say that the numbers of the following form, the numbers of the following form are divisible by both 3 and 8. And these numbers are the red ticks 8k, 8k plus 2, 8k plus 4, 8k plus 6, and 8k plus 7. 8k, 8k plus 2, 8k plus 4, 8k plus 6, 8k plus 7. These are the numbers. These are anyways divisible by 3. They are divisible by 8 also. And since they are divisible by both 3 and 8, they are divisible by 20. So how many outcomes? So guys, if I calculate the probability, what's the probability? Objective was to find out the probability. So probability of any event is what? Probability is nothing but favorable outcome on the total number of outcomes. So how many favorable outcomes are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many total number of outcomes were there? All the numbers were of the form, if you look at the series for 8, they were of the form 8k, 8k plus 1, dot, 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 8k plus 7. How many outcomes are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Total number of outcomes were 8. So my required probability that the product of two numbers with immediate success is divisible by 24 is nothing but 5 by 8. Final answer for this question is 5 by 8. Okay, so hoping all students have understood this. So I can come to the question paper and we can all mark the correct answer, which is 5 by 8. This is the correct answer for this question. Okay, so hoping all students have understood. So students, this is where I intend to stop in this particular lecture. The objective was to discuss the first 4 questions which have come in the ISI PEA 2021 entrance. Okay, we'll start our discussion from question 5 onwards in the next lecture for the ISI MA Economics entrance. So this is where I intend to stop. Remember, for ISI, we have the MSQE entrance for all economics students, Masters of Science in Quantitative Economics. Okay, so we'll continue with our discussion from question 5 onwards in the next lecture of the MSQE ISI 2021 entrance. So I hope all students have enjoyed this lecture. Any doubt, you can unmute your mic and ask, or you can call up or mail me your doubts at divineschoolofeconomics@gmail.com. This is where I stop in this lecture.